Good evening, afternoon, and night, you bunch of weirdos. That's right, today we're gonna be talking about the time a guy got so fuck-ass mad about the Nazi Party's existence that he decided that the only way to beat them was to troll them so hard that they would end up fucking themselves. Today, we're talking about Juan Garcia, aka Garbo the Spy. This little story would all begin on Valentine's Day in Barcelona in 1912, where Juan Garcia would be born as the third child of four to a very Catholic mother and a very liberal-leaning politically father. This would all culminate into him basically becoming a very rebellious teenager, going as far as to leave school after an argument with his teacher to go work at a hardware store. He would also end up later working in animal husbandry, work at a cinema, among other things. Come by 1931, Juan would serve his 6 compulsory months in the Spanish military, where he would work in a cavalry unit. Unfortunately for him, he fucking hated horses. Even more unfortunately, around this time frame, his father would also pass away. Luckily, however, his father had made a good bit of money and made sure to leave a nest egg for him and his family in the event of his passing. This was all fine and great for a couple years, just until the very start of the Spanish Civil War, when a bunch of workers at the factory that he owned took over the factory and caused a bunch of problems. Without getting into too many details of the Spanish Civil War, because I feel very underqualified to explain it all, there were basically 2 major sides to the war, among a couple other ones. There was the Spaniard nationalists and the Republic, who was I believe, the major governing body at the time. The nationalists were, well, they were nationalists, they were fascists, they were a bunch of bastards. And the Republic was a bunch of social communists, aka a bunch of bastards. Because of the start of the Spanish Civil War, Juan would be called upon for his military service, which he would end up denying and being arrested for. The reason he ended up denying it was because his mother and sister would also be arrested because they didn't want to support the war effort, and to the Republic, if you didn't want to support it, then you were actively working against it, which naturally made Juan go, what the fuck, why are you asking me to do this shit? You arrested my mom and my sister, I'm not helping you bastards. Juan would end up getting arrested and having a stay in prison for about a week until a bunch of revolutionaries came, busted him out, and gave him papers which basically said that he was too old to be drafted into the military. Juan would be like, cool, thanks guys, I'm gonna go back to my farm, but oh wait, the Republic took over my farm because, you know, communist war effort, they needed all the resources they could get, which just pissed off Juan. So he decided, hey man, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna go join the Republic, and then just to make a point, I'm gonna defect over to the nationalist side, and that's exactly what he did. He basically went up to the Republic going, hey guys, I'll be a telegraph lineman for the front lines, I'm here for you, let's go. And they were like, cool, you know, we got you, bro. So he would do just that. He would go to the front lines, start laying down line, and then as soon as basically everyone had their backs turned, he would run over to the nationalist side and be like, hey guys, I'm here to work for y'all. To which they would immediately capture him, beat the ever-living dog shit out of him, and imprison him for 2 years because they didn't believe that he was gonna fight for their cause. They didn't believe that he actually believed in their cause, which, to be fair, he didn't. He was just a petty son of a bitch who didn't like the Republic. During this time, in the 2 years, he realized he also didn't like the nationalists just as much as he didn't like the Republic, because they were a bunch of fascists who believed in supremacy and fighting people who, you know, didn't believe in what they believed in politically. So this culminated into him hating 2 big things: socialism/communism and fascism. So 2 years later, when he was finally released and had been sitting there with his wife and son and had heard about this group in Europe who was stirring up trouble called the Nationalist Socialist Party, aka the fucking Nazi Party, Juan was absolutely not having any of their bullshit and decided, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna go be a spy and fuck with them. So that's what he did. He went to the British, because at the time, when all of this was culminating, the only 2 sides really fighting were the British and the Nazis. Well, he went over to the British and tried on 3 separate occasions to be like, hey guys, I want to work for you, but unfortunately, because he was just some random dude from a neutral country, they wanted nothing to do with him and denied him 3 separate times. Juan, with nothing else to gain or lose, decided, you know what, I'm gonna go be an agent for the Nazis and just fuck with them. He would end up going to the Nazis and be like, hey guys, I'm a political Nazi supporter in Spain, and I'm gonna be going to London, do y'all want to spy? And they were like, sure, where are your papers to prove it? Which Juan had forged document papers from Lisbon, which he got because he told people in Lisbon that the people from Madrid had agreed to him being a spy, and then the guys in Lisbon, with no other like factual evidence required, were like, okay, here you go, bro, here, take it, man. Which is fucking baffling to me. So upon seeing that Juan was actually, you know, a politician from Spain and wanted to work with the Nazis, they quickly got him set up on an espionage crash course, which they would teach him secret writing, give him an ink book, code book, and basically teach him how to be a spy, as well as giving him about $600 for expenses for living in London. His main task was to build a spy network that they could all, you know, use in London and for spy shit. After receiving his mission and all of his tools, Juan would promptly say, fuck that, I'm gonna stay in Lisbon, move to a library where I could get a bunch of newspapers and books on how to live life in London, and then just write letters to the Nazis about, well, life in London. Which is so fucking insane to me, because if you think about it, like, the Nazis, who, all intents and purposes, a pretty intelligent group of people, just trusted this dude with no other resources or no other fact checking. We're just like, yep, he sent us about like trams and cars in London, and that matches with this newspaper. Meanwhile, he's just like sitting over there in a library like, this was in a newspaper, this is nice, great, fantastic. Dude was just baffling them with bullshit at this point. On top of all this, Juan would claim to the Germans that he was traveling around Britain at the time and be submitting expenses, like travel expenses to them. And he didn't really know how the British pound system worked at the time because it wasn't the currency that he was really used to. So he would just be sending them these expenses and be like, you know what, here's the total, but I'll figure out what it really was later. You guys don't need to worry about it right now. It's no big deal. And the Germans believed him and found it fucking admirable that this guy was actually fighting for the cause and not just for the money. Which even further, like, they just really fucking liked this guy because of all of this. His trolling would only increase as he worked on his mission from the Nazi party, building his, spy network by basically just writing down fake names of people in letters, saying that he had talked to them, that they were going to be his sub-spy, and that he was radicalizing various groups of people. And reality, it was just Juan alone in a room, probably with a smile on his face, lying to the Germans saying, yeah, I spoke to Dave today, he said that yada 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 yada. And they still fucking believed him. Juan during this time would send so many transmissions to Germany that the British intelligence, counterintelligence group, MI5, would get word of it and basically have a manhunt out because they believed, well, there was a German spy in London. They would have a manhunt out for this guy, and for over a fucking year, Juan would not only troll the Germans, he would also inadvertently be fucking with the British too, which kind of serves them right for not taking this beautiful masterpiece of a troll in the first place. By the time the US would have gotten involved in the war, Juan was by all things considered a very effective spy. And since the British didn't want him, he decided, well, maybe the Americans will, so he just casually rolled up into Spain, into an American outpost, and was like, hey, here's all my credentials that I've been working with the Germans, could I be a double agent for you guys? To which the Americans were just, why the fuck didn't the British take you in the first place? You're fantastic. Which after this, of course, the British would only accept him and bring him into the British spy program, and in 1942, he would be officially moved to London, which he had never really been to before, and officially be made into a double agent, being the code name of Garbo after Greta Garbo, an actress, because this dude was so good at fucking with people and acting that it was like the only fitting name for him. During this time, and right after he had joined MI6, Garbo would end up sending about 350 transmissions or letters to the Germans, claiming to be either himself or his sub-spies. And the Germans would end up being so convinced by this that they would stop recruiting spies for London because they thought Garbo had it all, when in reality, it was just him. It was just this dude who was just fucking with them so bad. The way he would basically keep this entire act up was he would either give them unimportant info, super delayed info, or basically just false information, would claim that the false information was because he had a miscommunication with one of his sub-spies. His unimportant information would just be about life in London that they could just use to cross-reference in case they ever thought he was lying to him. And the delayed information he would just claim was the mail being late, which, like, fair, because 80 years later and I still can't get my fucking mail on time, let alone during a goddamn war. Because of all of this, and his standings with the Germans being absolutely so high and them claiming he was such a massive asset, they would eventually send him a code machine and a radio, which he would end up just giving to the British because the fuck is he gonna use for it? And they ended up making a fake operator for this radio, which was really just Garbo just being like, yeah, it's me, John. How can I help you today? Because they gave him this radio transmission, it created a series of problems with how he was going to lie to the Germans. However, all he had to do was basically claim there were more miscommunications and inaccuracies by his sub-spies. In one particular instance, the British had a fleet of ships leave Liverpool, to which the Germans, sent Juan a radio transmission and be like, hey, why the fuck didn't we know about this? That would have been really nice to know. Don't you have a sub-spy living in Liverpool? And Juan was like, oh, yeah, I'm so sorry, he got really sick, and then would send them another transmission about a week or two later saying, oh yeah, this guy actually died of his sickness, to which the British military would make a fake obituary for that Juan would send to Germany, and they would just be like, oh man, that sucks. They would send a pension to Juan for this guy's widow that Juan would just reasonably have taken and been like, oh, cool, thanks guys, yeah, appreciate it. They really appreciate your condolences there. Germany, not long after this, would end up sending Garbo one of their top-level Enigma machines as well as all of their updated codes, which he would just give directly to the British again, because he was working with the British, and the Germans the entire time, still thinking he was living in secrecy in London, were like, oh, this is a fantastic idea. This guy needs to be up to date. He's our best spy. And meanwhile, Garbo was just sitting at a desk looking at the codes being like, huh, hey, Captain! Next on Garbo's list of absolutely fucking with the Germans would be Operation Fortitude, an operation led by Garbo to keep the secrecy of Operation Overlord, also known as D-Day. See, the Germans around this time frame were having some major concerns about an Allied invasion taking place, so Garbo would end up sending about 500 messages in order to mislead them about where the invasion would be coming from. The top brass deciding it would be incredibly important for the Germans to believe when it had came time for the invasion, and to hit Omaha Beach, that they would be coming from the Strait of Dover. Garbo would end up feeding bits of information to the Germans, basically to keep his story as seemingly true as possible, saying that they were going to hit somewhere in the north shores of France, and that America would be spearheading the observation just enough to keep Germany going and believing his story. On the night of D-Day, the plan was that Garbo would send a message to Germany about the invasion. So at 3 a.m., Garbo would send them this message claiming that he had some good details, you know, I've got stuff for you guys, where are you? And Germany wouldn't respond until 8 a.m. The problem with this is the Omaha invasion began at around 6:30 a.m. So whenever Germany got back to him, they were like, oh shit, sorry man, we didn't see this message. That would have been really fucking useful though. And Garbo, being the absolute wonderful troll that he was so fuck-ass mad about the Germans and their ineptitude that he said, and I quote, I cannot accept excuses or negligence. Were it not for my ideals, I would abandon the work. He really isn't pulling any punches, is he? They just lost at Omaha Beach, one of the biggest losses that they could have ever had. And Garbo's just sitting there kicking them while they're down, just insulting them. Their major, like, badass spy is just fucking with them so hard. On June 9th, 3 days after D-Day, Garbo would send a message to German intelligence claiming that General Patton, along with 150,000 Allied forces, were stationed in southeast Britain, all to scare them so badly, thinking that another invasion fleet was coming that was going to be bigger than the one at Omaha Beach, so that they would hunker down and stay put where they were and not push their defenses out any further. This message from Garbo would be received by none other than the weird mustache himself, Adolf fucking Hitler, who would not only hold 2 armored divisions and 11 infantry units, all in one place, but also one of his best generals, Ernie Romwell, who was kind of pissed off at the idea, but people who were higher than him said he had to fucking stay because they were so fearful of this and believed Garbo so well that they had no other options. The best part about all of this is that the invasion fleet that Garbo was talking about was a group known as the Ghost Army, which was made of about 1,000 dudes, a bunch of inflatable fake tanks made by magicians and fake planes that were just like a parade group meant to just fuck with people. These troops would end up being held for 2 months, and during this time, Adolf Hitler himself would announce on the radio on July 29th of 1944 about Garbo being awarded the Iron Cross, which if you don't know is about the highest honor a military member could receive in the German military, being the equivalency of the Medal of Honor of the United States. This whole beautiful act of trolling would finally come to an end when the Germans would start asking Garbo whether their V-1 flying bombs were hitting London, and Garbo, not wanting to just be like, yeah, they're doing good, or giving them information about where they were hitting, elected to not say anything, claiming that Britain had basically a manhunt out for him for his arrest, so he had to leave London and write a fake apology to the Germans about his inability to function. During his time working with the Germans, Garbo would amass a whopping $340,000 for him and his network of spies to help with expenses, as well as the British equivalent to the Medal of Honor. And to my knowledge, Garbo is the only man to ever receive a Medal of Honor from both sides of the war, which is absolutely fucking insane to me. After the war had ended, Garbo would end up faking his own death and fleeing to Venezuela in fear of, pissed off Nazi remnants coming after him, where he would open up a gift shop and a bookstore and live out the rest of his days pretty quietly, all things considered. Is what I would be saying if in 1971 a British politician didn't basically have a manhunt for him, eventually finding him after getting a phone book and calling every single J. Garcia he could find, getting in contact with his nephew, and by 1985 would meet and collaborate on an autobiography about him called Operation Garbo. He'd also end up meeting with Prince Philip and having a long audience, as well as going to a special forces group and meeting up with a bunch of his late colleagues. And to cap it all off, Juan Garcia would pass away in 1988 due to natural causes, being surrounded by friends and family and dying peacefully at his home, putting an end to Garbo the Spy. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is our story of Juan Garbo Garcia, the greatest spy who ever lived, and possibly the biggest troll who ever lived. He was a man who hated bullies in this world so much that he would do anything in his power to keep them down, and if not being able to take them down directly, he was going to baffle them with bullshit and fuck with them so hard they would end up crashing and burning in the ground themselves. So if you've gained nothing from this video, just remember, Nazis are bad, and thanks for watching.